Utilitarianism. If you have a piece of cake and sharing it with others makes everyone happier than keeping it for yourself, utilitarianism would say you should share it. Utilitarianism, proposed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, suggests that the best action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or pleasure and minimizes suffering. However, a drawback is that it can sometimes prioritize majority happiness over the rights or well-being of minority groups, leading to potential injustices. Kantian Ethics. Introduced by Immanuel Kant, it focuses on carrying out one's duty by following universal moral rules. For example, Kant would argue that irrespective of personal gain or loss, someone who borrows money has a duty to keep their promise of return. However, one downside is that it can lead to moral rigidity, where decisions are based strictly on principles without considering the situation or outcomes. Divine command theory. Encouraged by many religious thinkers such as Al-Ghazali, John Calvin argues that a divine being or deity shapes ethical values. For instance, if a religious book instructs followers not to steal, the concept of divine command would argue that stealing is unethical, as it violates the divine commandment. Its disadvantage is that it relies on personal interpretations of religious texts and ideas, which vary based on different individuals and religious traditions. Natural law theory. According to thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas, this theory holds that the natural order and universal principles that characterize human nature determine morality. For example, acts like protecting innocent lives and seeking knowledge are intrinsically good because they suit our natural inclinations. However, what is natural can be arbitrary and open to interpretation, which results in differences in particular moral rules and values based on natural law. Social contract theory. Philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau proposed this theory, which says that a hypothetical agreement among members of society derives moral and political rules. People agree to follow laws and respect one another's rights in exchange for government protection and social order. However, this theory relies on a vague idea of a social contract, which may not accurately depict the complexities of actual relationships and power relations, making application difficult everywhere. Virtue ethics. As advocated by Aristotle, virtue ethics focuses on developing moral qualities that guide behavior. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" one asks, "What kind of person should I be?" If honesty is a virtue, for example, a virtuous person would always be honest. However, moral qualities can be subjective because different societies and people define what constitutes moral behavior. For instance, certain societies may view modesty as a virtue, whereas others may place a higher value on assertiveness. Ethics of care. Advocated by Carol Gilligan and Nell Noddings, ethics of care stresses the need for interpersonal relationships and compassion as fundamental guides in moral decisions. A nurse practicing ethics of care would prioritize her patient's comfort and well-being over rigorous adherence to hospital policies. One disadvantage, though, is that it might cause favoritism or bias toward people near us, neglecting the needs of others outside of our direct line of contact. A teacher might, for example, show more care for a struggling student they know personally, unintentionally neglecting the needs of other students. Cultural relativism. Advocated by anthropologists such as Franz Boas and Ruth Benedict, cultural relativism holds that moral standards are relative to cultural settings, hence determining what is right or wrong differs between societies. For instance, whereas some societies view eating beef as acceptable, others may find it forbidden because of religious views. One drawback, however, is that it can cause moral uncertainty, making it impossible to criticize destructive practices in other societies, such as child marriage, even if they violate universal human rights. Ethical egoism. Proposed by thinkers such as Ayn Rand, ethical egoism asserts that individuals should act in their own best interests. Those who follow ethical egoism would contend that it is morally right to put their own well-being above others. The disadvantage, though, is that it might encourage self-serving behavior that ignores the needs and interests of others. If someone practices ethical egoism in a group project, they might refuse to cooperate or share credit, compromising the general effectiveness of the project and their rapport with team members.